to another episode of the Hlena Talks, where laughter and learning are our weekly dose. It is all about art, science, and politics. So stay tuned as we get more insight on these topics. But before we move on, let us have the news headlines. I am HELLEN.A.OWUOR. And in the stories making headlines, University of Nairobi disowns Quran's papers. Matiang'i says 3 TV stations will remain shut until investigations are complete. United States signs arms trade treaty despite NRA opposition. And finally, Kenyans react to Raila Odinga's swearing in. That is it from the Hlena Talks news desk. My name is HELLEN.A.OWUOR. Today's episode will be quite different from what we've had there before, as we will be looking at the highlights of the 3 previous episodes, which were on art, politics, and science. In these episodes, we had informative interviews and having people's opinions on various topics. If you missed these episodes, worry not, because we'll give you a glimpse of exactly what happened. In our lineup, we have interesting interviews, word on the street, and something from our field reporters. Taking a look at episode 1, here's what carried the day as we're talking about fine art in Kenya.
It's true that creativity pays, and yet with all the artistic minds in Kenya, we find that some still go unnoticed. Walking down the paths of Daystar University, I got to ask some people whether they feel that art is appreciated enough in Kenya.
I feel that art in Kenya is not supported that much, especially drawings and paintings. We tend to focus much on music and acting, and we forget that there is another part of art. And it's a bit of a struggle for some people, especially in Kenya, to just buy a drawing or a painting. For example, we went to Kuona Trust, and the artist there said that most of the times that the people that buy their artwork are from people from other countries and tourists.
I don't think art is so much appreciated in Kenya because, you see, first of all, it was removed from the 844 system of education in Kenya, and besides, that was something that really helped a lot of people who couldn't be at the same bar with all the people who know how to study or are fast learners. Yeah,
art is not appreciated in Kenya. This is because I don't see a lot of people like earning from it. Like, you find that even the artists or rather those people who can draw opt to do other things as compared to making art as their main source of income.
I have been in Kenya for 3 years, and I think art is not so much appreciated. People tend to concentrate more on theater and music and just drama, and I feel like people who know how to draw should come out and just showcase their things and have an exposition so that people will appreciate their arts.
The struggles of an artist are mainly known by the artist himself. I was on a mission to know Quirin's thoughts with regards to appreciation of art in Kenya and more.
I'm Lovonga Quirin. I'm an artist, designer. What inspires me to draw is the people around me, the environment, and my upbringing. To me personally, I think most artists are not appreciated, but it depends on the people you meet, the clients you work with. Yeah, because most people don't take art as a career; they take art as a hobby. But to me, I take it as a career. What I think can be done is improvements will be done maybe at our curriculum, our education system. There are fewer art courses. Yeah. Now, the scope to choose the course you want in art is limited. To me, art, especially the various branches of creativity, be it music, be it dancing, be it sculpture, craftsmanship.
While most people feel that the government and the Kenyan citizens at large can make great impact if more effort is put, this of course will expose more of the unknown artwork, like the mosaics, text art, sculpture, pop art, futurism, and many others. Here is more on art. Mrs. Njoroge is a lecturer at Daystar University and teaches courses such as Art in Africa, Graphic Design, and Advertising courses. There is more to art than what we normally see or think, and she tells us about it.
African art, a lot of it, many people are not aware because I think in Kenya we're used to the Kamba art, we're used to Maasai art, but if we consider all the other countries in Africa, they all have their distinct kind of fine art, and most of that art consists of sculptures. So like in Nigeria, we have sculptures produced by the Igbo, the Yoruba tribe, and all these, they're so foreign to Kenyans especially. And then we have modern art, and a lot of that is really foreign to, especially to Africans and Kenyans, like Cubism, there's Surrealism, there's op art, there's so many, there's Impressionism, there's so many different kinds of art that people are not aware of. There's a renaissance in Kenya. I don't know about the other African countries, but I know in Kenya it's like there's a renaissance. It's like a birthing of the arts. Huh? So that's why we're seeing so many musicians. We see them on TV and everywhere. The same thing is happening in the fine arts. Is because, you know, music, we hear it, and I think the youth are so much into music, it's more visible. But even in the arts, there's so much happening. There's so much going on. We have art galleries and exhibitions where people fly in from out of the country, from the US, from Europe, all over. They come to these art exhibitions. They buy African art. They just come specifically to buy African art, and then they fly out. And a lot of this art is really expensive, over $1 million and $2 million and so on. So there is a lot happening, even in the world of crafts. So there's the fine art and the crafts. In all that, there's like a renewal or something, a rebirth.
Art is beautiful and an expression of what we feel. It should be embraced in all dimensions. One thing that stands out is fine art artists need recognition and more support from the public. Remember that art is what keeps you smiling every day. Reporting for the Hlena Talks, my name is Vanessa Njiru, here at Daystar University.
Health is key for your normal body functioning as a human being. However, sometimes we take in substances that may affect how we function. Here is more from episode 2.
We say that all our actions have consequences. This also applies to those who take marijuana and other drugs in Kenya. So, with the 2017 petition by Gwada Ogot to legalize the marijuana use, due to its medicinal and industrial uses, many have had different reactions to this.
I believe that bang should be legalized because as we can refer from the scripture, God has given us all the plants that bear fruits and seeds for human use, for food. And I think bang is a natural plant.
I feel that perhaps it should be legalized, perhaps it should not be legalized because one, most people misuse it, and two, because it has like medical uses, recreational uses. You know, you can prescribe it to someone who has stress, someone who has issues with pain due to cancer medication or radiation, things like that.
It shouldn't be legalized for one reason. A lot of people, and let me say the young guys, misuse it. There's a lot of uses, yes, because even doctors try their best to prescribe at some level, but a lot of guys misuse it. That's why it shouldn't be legalized.
I'm 50-50 about the whole issue, considering the fact that in some countries, yes, it has been legalized with the reason that it can be used as a pain-relieving drug. But then again, I feel like people might take advantage of the whole situation and misuse the drug.
We have witnessed the fall of many as they struggle with drug addiction. some recover and some do not. I headed out to find how bang, a commonly used drug by the youth, can cause harm to one's health and even its benefits, if any. Mr. Jared Menecha explains.
Yeah, marijuana has got, we talk of a positive and negative effects. And some of the positive effects, let me start with them, but I want to say that with caution. One of them, they say that it's used to treat eating disorders, for example, anorexia. It's also used in treating acute pains. It's also used to treat other conditions, for example, people who have problems with the digestive system. But those are just a few of them. Yeah. Some of the negative effects of marijuana is that one of them is that it makes people feel high. And even as they try to do that, there's a big problem with that because they are not themselves. They lose what we call personal identity. At the same time, because of the prolonged use of marijuana, it affects the brain and bring about other problems like depression, anxiety. We also have schizophrenia. We have other acute problems such as bronchitis. We have others, for example, other problems such as acute psychosis. And therefore, we find that the negative effects outweigh the positive effects.
Yeah.
In my own view, we should legalize marijuana in Kenya with some limitations. Why am I saying that? We have to limit that to medical uses only. It's only because of the way it is in Kenya that we have tried to criminalize actually the plants and even the products. That's why we have these problems coming up. And at the end of the day, what makes these people is that they go to an extent of using marijuana in the raw form, which is actually very dangerous to their health. So what is very important is that the Kenyan perception is that we can actually legalize that, but with a lot of limitations to medical uses.
Well, there are always two sides of a coin, and with that there are those that are against the legalization of bang, and there are those that are for it. We may say that ignorance plays a big role in ruining the lives of the youth, and some of them do not even know the dangerous effects of taking bang. Here is more to shed light on the topic. Considering the influence of bang and the possibility of its legalization here in Kenya, I got to talk to Miss Irene, a student counselor at Daystar University who has dealt with cases of drug addiction before.
Marijuana, cannabis, sativa, all those long names. Weed, yeah, it's a drug which is common in our days. In fact, some research says it's one of the most common used drug in our world today. And why people want maybe to legalize it is that it can be used especially for people who are terminally ill, like in cancer patients and HIV. But of course, those are to the extreme, maybe at the fourth stage of cancer or when somebody is at the final stages of HIV. Okay, now as a psychologist, I would say, based on the people we have seen and the research we have seen, the negatives outweigh the positive. Because especially when somebody becomes psychotic, they start hearing voices, they start not, seeing things which no one else is seeing. They start becoming more prone to anxiety attacks, depression. So for them, it takes now a downhill progress. They can also become addicted in that they cannot function without this drug. So that's why we say as much as there are some positive, the negatives far much outweigh, and in the long term, it's hard to get out of that addiction. The thing is, we usually say even if it's legalized like in hospital, it will start in the hospital, but somehow it will find its way into the market. And unfortunately, the people who suffer are the ones who are vulnerable. Maybe one thing which, any drug which is legalized, one thing which you need to do is to educate the public. So of course, bang also, that it's the same thing, that it makes somebody not sleep, it makes somebody work harder, it increases alertness, and those are the arguments people use for bang, and that's why they are like, it's so easily available, why can't we legalize it, but with precautions? So that's why we usually say any drug that is going to be legalized, alcohol is legal, but we have seen what it has done. So let's do education. But for me, as a psychologist, because of the cases I've dealt with and the harm I've seen it doing physically, psychologically, socially, financially, I would say that's not a step we are ready to take right now. One of the first things when you realize you've gone towards addiction is to see somebody. Most likely we say see a professional, a counselor, a doctor, a psychiatrist, or somebody, so that they do an assessment. One of the things we like them going to the hospital is they assess their percentage in their system. Is it harmful? Is it manageable? Then after doing the assessment, we now know the steps. Do you need to go for a detox to have these drugs flush out? Do you need to go for counseling to help you deal? Maybe there's an underlying issue which is leading you there, or do you just need social support? You know, the people around you, if they support you, you can make the right choice.
According to a report launched at the Pan-Afrique Hotel in 2016, marijuana was the most abused drug among the youth. Apart from creating awareness, it all boils down to making a personal decision to get rid of drugs and drug addiction. Reporting for the Hlena Talks, it is I, Kirui Brian.
Based on what you're saying, I feel like you've not really done enough research, because according to you, it doesn't really have negative effects.
My research is totally right, it is on point, it is totally correct, and that is why I even have the confidence to say here live in front of all these cameras that marijuana should be legal and it is very healthy. It should just be like how people take kales. You buy kales from a kibanda, you go home, you cook it, nobody asks you about anything. That should be the same case with marijuana.
So recently we had the banning of shisha. Do you support that?
Yes, I support the banning of shisha. And you see, shisha has a variety of impurities, and I would say this openly because first of all there is nicotine. Now we don't know all these chemicals that they merge with it, so that now they create this fragrances and everything. And like marijuana is totally pure, natural.
Yes.
Talking about natural, so we're talking about something natural right here.
Yes, yes.
It's all about what involving as many people as possible to get the experience and the feeling. And for somebody like you coming on board and having this experience, it will be very important for you to also, so that you can have different perspectives.
Okay, well, I believe I don't really have to try something to really know its side effects. From seeing,
you can't just read about it. You have to experience it. It has to
from seeing what other people have gone through, who have taken bang. Yes, I would say I wouldn't want to be in that situation.
Watch other people. People take bang and they become billionaires. Do you know that? People take bang and they climb mountains.
Because of bang.
Because no.
So it triggers.
Not because of T-bang. No. Because they have taken into their bodies a creation of God.
Yes. You keep mentioning it's God's creation.
Yes.
Do you eat anything that is God's creation? For example, I am human, you're human. Would you take my meat because because I'm God's creation?
Yes, I will take your meat.
Really?
Yeah. It depends. I'm taking it for what? So, I can take it and remember this is Helen.
So you would allow cannibalism, let's say even in your family, or let's say your son was you would allow that?
Yeah. Why? Why will I allow that? Because I can't restrict his tastes.
That's strange. The government of Kenya has not been able to control the taking of alcohol, let's say from 18 and below. How will they be able to control those who take marijuana?
They're not supposed to control them. They're supposed to let it happen. Just I've said, just like if you go to a kiosk and you buy greens. You take the greens, you go home, you cook them. Nobody asks you. Nobody comes to your door and hey, so you're eating greens right now. Let's go to jail. That is the same attitude that you need to have for marijuana. You take marijuana, you smoke it, you can smoke it even when you walk to church.
Clearly, that is a topic with many contrasting views, which we must accept is allowed. Let us go on a short break, and when we get back, we'll get to know what is in the third episode.
Hip hop, bebop, don't stop. I'm hot, pop star. Pop star. Gonna be a pop star. You're a pop star.
No, I don't trust the numbers that were given during the election and during the re-election. Mainly because the government couldn't get us to trust the IEBC.
The results, they were determined to be
null and void because of obvious reasons. The IBC, the commission, failed to deliver appropriately. So come 26 October, they held a re-election, and this time it was a bit free and fair, though the turnout was extremely low. So I fail to understand where the numbers came from.
I do not have confidence with our election, electioneering process and whatnot. And so I think that the August 8th polls were a sham, especially also the 26th October were also a sham. Yeah.
So do you think it was a brave move for Kenya to nullify a presidential election?
It was. It was.
Why is that?
Since it is the first time, the first nation to take such a brave move in Africa and a third country in the context of the world, it wasn't an easy thing.
Yes.
And I really, really appreciate the judiciary for that action.
Okay. So do you appreciate it because it was the first country in Africa to do that, or is it because of the results that came from it? Or
As an activist,
yes,
I don't tend to lean on one side of the political party or something.
Yes.
I like it when justice takes the core of the day. I don't support it because it favors NASA, and since that I come from the stronghold of NASA, now I tend to support it. No, I supported it because it gave Kenyans justice. If you look at it as a matter of fact, the elections were shambled. It wasn't authentic.
Yes.
It wasn't something to be accepted. That's why when they nullified it, and I said that that is what should be done, not only in Kenya, but every part of Africa, then we'll move away from the third class that we are classified in.
That's not all for that episode on politics. Our reporter Linda Ngari got to talk to some key players in the political arena.
The Kenyan political arena has been one full of drama for the past few years. Call it corruption, theft, propaganda, and many other vices. The nullification of the presidential election was recently witnessed. I talked to Mr. Masindano from Daystar University to help understand how this was possible.
What I do at Daystar currently is actually part of what I started doing when I joined the university. I think teaching what was then referred to as general education courses, which are historical. But my training is in the area of communication. I'm doing development communication currently at Jomo Kenyatta University. But what I do at Daystar is mainly historical courses. The nullification of the August 8th elections in Kenya. It was a shocker not just to the politicians but also to Kenyans. Like you say, Kenya has that history of you can corrupt your way through, but and in fact according to reports then, Kenya just happens to be among 4 nations in the world and the first in Africa to do so, nullification of presidential elections. I think that that points to me maybe 2 things. Number one, that not everyone in Kenya is corrupt, and that perhaps we have people that still hold certain values dear. And I think the Supreme Court demonstrated that by that decision, which is actually a strange one in Africa and a strange one even in the larger world. So we have people that still can say, let's do the right thing, let's follow the process as it is, as it plays out. And I think also to say that perhaps there was a level of courage that was demonstrated by the Supreme Court, that in spite of what is the norm in Kenya and in Africa to simply just follow that the existing government cannot actually be removed from power, especially when it is just another term in office before the expiry of that term for the president. Look at it to say politically it may have been a bold decision, but the consequences to that decision are dire to the nation. Actually, even up to now, of course, we know that there is that fear that there is going to be a parallel government swearing in of the NASA candidates. And then, of course, at the same time, we have an already sworn in president and deputy president. I would think that as a nation, we would need to get to a point where we can actually weigh the decisions against the consequence that it would have on the nation. I guess that would, for me, be an important way to go as we think into the future.
It is a fact that numbers are not adding up, but what else will be done to solve this crisis that Kenya is undergoing when we have petitions being filed left, right, and center? It is not enough that many lives have been lost due to politics or the fact that citizen voters are the ones who suffer. Since the integrity in Kenya is a bitter pill to swallow, then who will trust who? Here is what Mr. Karani had to say.
Okay. The elections of the 8th, of course, there are issues with the process, but numbers cannot be ruled out either. Still, several questions were not answered because I think it would have been good because of suspicion on the numbers that how did they come, how are they arrived at. It would have been good if the technological part was made public also to verify, because I think the computers are supposedly registered or captured the numbers. But we were told it was difficult to open, like the server, to get to see those details. That, of course, leaves a question mark whether it was valid. Because one of the things we are proud about is we are technologically well-to-do. And to say that we cannot be able to access and look at those figures and numbers, I think was not a good thing. It leaves doubt, it leaves questions unanswered. And that, of course, means that our confidence may not be 100% now. We can't be certain of that. We also saw that there were some of the officials in there who supposedly were compromised. That, of course, raises questions again on the integrity and whether we can be able to trust the numbers. So that leaves a big gap that we hope the IEBC can be able to work on in the future. Well, one, it was positive on the one side because there's a cry about the integrity of the election. The manner in which they were conducted elicited a lot of different reactions, and the fact that the Supreme Court listened to the applicants and came up with a verdict indicated that at least there was something that didn't go well, and it was okay to nullify that. But obviously on the international level, because now we're like the 4th country in the world to have presidential results nullified for a sitting president, that of course sets a precedent for a message to Africa and other areas that things can be bad even for sitting presidents.